The Face Off Sports Network presents the Fantasy Football Face Off. Get ready for fantasy, DFS, and betting talk to get you in the game. If you want to win, you have to tune in. With Anthony Servino, Matt McKay, and Steve D'Angelo. Welcome to the Fantasy Football Face-Off.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back, Face Off Sports Network. I'm your host, Anthony Servino. Follow me on Twitter at The Real NFL Guru. Follow the show at the FF Face Off and at fffaceoff.com. We can be found at all the top social media and podcast platforms. Back with me on a Football Monday, we're going to talk some fantasy football ADP check versus player versus player. We have Pete Terranova at Supernova 38, Fantasy Savvy, Steve D'Angelo, and Matt McKay at Matt_McKay_ on Twitter. Guys, what's going on?
Yeah, what's going on, everybody? What's going on, Anthony, Pete, Matt? Welcome. The 4 quad group is back. We're ready to get into the latest and the greatest. Let's go.
Yeah, it was funny, the whole intro of, like, you know, you have to tune in if you win. My dad called me today and he said he literally said it to me, and I said, "Are you fucking with me right now?"
That's great.
So what's your problem? But yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, man, this is a full barn. Don't get to enjoy this very often, so let's make it a good one and get right on into it.
So we have a few players we're going to talk about. They're more polarizing, pretty close in ADP. Fantasy draft seasons here. I get we're still in dynasty season, but with rookie drafts underway, they're going to come and go. And, depending on who you are, you're already in best ball drafts. You're going to be preparing for redraft. And we're on a beeline really to week 1 with the NFL draft behind us. So we're going to start cranking up redraft season and best ball season, of course, as we get closer, high stakes fantasy season. So let's start with some quarterbacks, and Anthony Richardson versus CJ Stroud, and I'm using underdog ADP. Right now, Stroud is going as a QB4, Richardson as a QB6.
Yeah, I think that there's value being left on the table here with Richardson. We got a small sample size of what he was going to do in Steichen's offense last year. I think he had 2 rushing touchdowns in the first quarter against Houston. Then he got the concussions. So if that holds up, and there's no reason to think that it won't with Jonathan Taylor fully healthy, man, I think Anthony Richardson could absolutely be breaking fantasy football this year. CJ Stroud had a phenomenal rookie campaign. We all know that. That's my guy out of Ohio State. I thought he was going to do good, not that good, but we'll see how the sophomore slump, whether it hits him or not. They added pieces like Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon to Houston's offense, so I don't think there's going to be much of a fall off at all. But for fantasy purposes, I love a rushing quarterback. You get more value, especially in leagues that have the 4 point for a passing touchdown and 6 for the rushing. You want a guy that's mobile and is going to get those red zone touches. Anthony Richardson fits that mold completely. So to me, I would rather invest in A-Rich. Almost said A-Rod.
Steve, what are you thinking? And then I'll wrap it up. And
Stroud was absolutely awesome last year, obviously. And, he's got even more weapons this year now with Diggs and another year in the NFL. Yeah, always a sophomore slump risk, but I just don't see it with Stroud. I mean, he was pro ready when he first came in. He showed it right off the bat. He was good all freaking year. He was damn solid. So I think when you take Stroud, you feel a little bit more comfortable when you take him, obviously. And then Richardson's probably more of a risk, but there's more upside because you're getting the rushing yards, obviously, and he could really just explode and have a monster season. So Richardson's more exciting. Stroud is more safe. It depends on how you want to do it. I'll definitely mix it up a little bit. I would like Richardson a lot this year. I think, I was a little hesitant when he first came into the league. I wanted to see how he was going to develop as a passer, but he's working his balls off. He did a good job last year. From what I saw last year, just couldn't stay healthy. He's got to be a little bit smart. Took some rough hits, so that's always a concern too. You got to worry about the injury risk. So again, risk as far as a passer, being a consistent player week to week, and then the injury risk as well. So I still am going to target Richardson, but Stroud, I like to have a little bit of him as well, even though he's not going to give you those rushing yards. He doesn't really run a lot. He can at times when he wants to, but for the most part, he's going to sit in the pocket and just throw darts all over the field. So I like getting both of these guys, more upside with one, more risk with one, and a little bit safer with Stroud.
Real quick before you guys go, they did add Adonai Mitchell out of Texas to fill that wide receiver 2 or 3 spot, putting Alec Pierce down at the board. So that makes me a little bit more intrigued by A-Rod. I almost said A-Rod again, AR-15. Let's just call him that. But go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I think I would love to be different and controversial for the sake of the show, but I think I had seen a statistic that shared with the amount of rushing yards that Anthony Richardson had. CJ Stroud had last year, which is 167. I don't think we've seen a quarterback that's had a QB1 season with that little of rushing yards since Peyton Manning in 2015, who had -6. So I'm sorry, not 2015. I meant to say 2013, who had -31 rushing yards Peyton Manning had. So I think that's what scares me. If you want to play it safe, I can definitely understand. But if you're going for upside, Richardson makes the most sense. Stroud also plays with a better defense, so I don't think he'll be forced to be in many shootouts. Whereas Richardson's defense is not nearly as good, which may force them to be in more track meets. Whereas the Texans have a defensive-minded head coach in DeMeco Ryans. So I don't see them being in many shootout games. So I would take Richardson just for the upside. But the injuries do scare me. The rushing, it can be a blessing and a curse. So I would approach with caution, but I would prefer Richardson in most formats.
Stroud dazzled a lot of people last year. Obviously, we didn't see a lot of Anthony Richardson. What I think people are going to be blinded by is Stephon Diggs and all of the weapons that CJ Stroud has at his disposal. But what's going overlooked is the addition of Joe Mixon, who is a big-time upgrade over Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary. Mixon is a workhorse, 3-down workhorse, can also catch the football. I think Houston's going to run the ball more than people think. And that's obviously going to take away from CJ Stroud. I think if you want to play it safe, CJ Stroud's going to be a high floor, very safe quarterback, is probably going to finish in the top 12, but I don't know if he has it in him necessarily to finish as a top 5 guy, which is where we're drafting him. What I am seeing in early high stakes ADP is the same mindset we have here, where Anthony Richardson's actually going in the top 4. And there's a lot of risk involved with Anthony Richardson. We haven't seen a lot of them. And there's that injury risk. Can he protect himself? But between his skill set and the Stan Steichen offense, and I do think I like Stroud weapons, but there's enough with Pittman, Downs, Pierce, Mitchell, wherever he may fit in. And of course, you have Jonathan Taylor, a journeyman, I don't want to say journeyman, or a tight end room by committee. There's enough there for Anthony Richardson to thrive along with his rushing skill set. So I'm with you guys. I am drafting Anthony Richardson over CJ Stroud. Now, before we go on to the next topic, Hoff's in the chat. He's bringing up a Joe Burrow. And I don't know if you guys have seen it or not. There's a guy on Twitter. He thinks he's an NFL insider. Puts a lot of, I'm not going to mention names. I don't want to mention names.
That's Pete's boy, right?
I don't know if it's his boy. No. Oh. Pete's boy actually does things correctly. This guy,
somebody else. Okay.
He thinks that he moved the needle, and his tweet facilitated the Justin Fields trade. So today, this guy tweets again saying that Joe Burrow, his source is saying Joe Burrow will never be the same, talking about broken bones. Meanwhile, Joe Burrow did not break a bone. It was a ligament issue. So, like, as usual, this guy's getting torn up on Twitter, but you know what his purpose, I guess, is to get engagement. He's getting engagement, good or bad, but like, you can't buy into this stuff. Like, if you're reading this or come across this report, to me, it's false. It's garbage. There's no relevant source to it, in my opinion. And I think you guys would share the same view.
Well, it's funny. You know, though we're not naming names, Hoff quoted it. So if you follow Hoff on Twitter, he did just quote it.
I unfollowed the guy today.
You did follow him or you unfollowed him?
I followed him in the past, but I unfollowed him today.
It grinded your gears. Well, there was a post 15 minutes ago by the Cincinnati Bengals that says Joey B on a mission. Maybe the admin saw this this very, very large beat writer or alleged beat writer. Yeah, whatever he calls himself. Scoopers. Maybe a scooper. He's hard at work, he says. So, you know, maybe this was a little dig to our buddy to show him that Joey's feeling okay.
Yeah, you got to trust, you know, the legit doctors. I don't know who the hell this guy is. I think you sent me this guy's name once. I don't even know who. I don't even know. I've never seen any of those tweets, so I don't know. Yeah, if you're a dumbass, if you're gonna believe what the hell is this guy's talking about, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. So you got to look at the doctors. You know, it was a calf injury for Burrow last year that kept him out.
It was the calf first, then it was the wrist.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, then the wrist. Oh, yeah, right. He hurt the wrist later on. You're right. But his quarterback coach came out today and said he looked great. He looked quick, athletic. So, you know, I think you just keep it moving there. And you gotta know what to pay attention to on Twitter and not pay attention to it. It's hard because if you're following too many damn people, you're gonna get all this influx of information and it's just nonstop. And you just gotta kind of, just do your own process.
Like, unless they have, like, it's Schefter. Like, Schefter and who's the guy from Fox and NFL Network? Pete Schrager, Rappaport. The guys who have legitimate sources. This schmuck doesn't know anybody.
Right.
Justin Tech is one of my buddies here on Twitter. He said beat off writer on YouTube comment there. That's exactly
right. That's what I called him.
Yeah,
when you were talking, I called him he's a beat off writer.
And one more comment from Hoff here. I'll be tweeting beat off writer before the night is through.
Now I got to go back to the archive and find out who we're talking about because I totally missed this today. So good to know the backstory on this one.
By the way, one more thing before we get to the next thing. Kyle Schwarber just hit a home run. So 6-1 Phillies. We just need them to score. Just don't score one more run and me and Anthony.
Middletown, Ohio, stand up.
That, baby. Best bet.
So let's go to our next set of players. More quarterback talk, and Kirk Cousins versus Jared Goff, and where Kirk Cousins is being drafted right now, it's absurd, considering what we know Kirk Cousins have done in the past, and we have Cousins as the QB 17 on Underdog, Goff going as a QB 14. Who wants to take it first?
Well, I mean, I've watched a lot of Kirk Cousins games, and I know he's in a different uniform, but this feels a bit disrespectful. Let's remember Arthur Smith is not calling plays in Atlanta anymore. I think we have a descendant of the McVay tree calling the plays?
Yeah, Zach Robinson, the O'Connell, McVay tree, same offense.
Okay, and we know Cousins is one of the most accurate throwers of the football who remains in the league. So, yeah, with weapons like Pitts, London, Bijan, that's your core, and a good offensive line, you're going to disrespect Kirk like this? I mean, pretty insane stuff in my opinion. But Jared Goff as well, I think Jared's kind of in a good spot, but in terms of Kirk Cousins being available as the QB 17 behind Trevor Lawrence, behind Justin Herbert, that feels like that shouldn't be happening. So I'm a bit perplexed here. Do we think that is there some hesitancy after the torn Achilles that he might not look the same? Because I would understand that. Maybe that's the reason there's a bit of a dip here, but if you're taking that out of the equation, I don't see any reason to have Cousins at QB 17. That's too low.
Steve?
Yeah, I really don't want either of these guys. But if you're going to, I kind of look at these guys the same to me. I mean, if you're going to give me, if I have to grab one of these guys, I'll just take whoever's going after and just grab that because they're kind of similar to me. They're not going to really, they'll give you some consistent games. I mean, Goff had a nice year last year, 4,500 yards, 30 touchdowns. Definitely a nice offense. Once again, they just inked up Amon-Ra St. Brown. They got Laporta. Obviously, we all know the whole spiel. So it's very similar. I'm just taking whoever's going later in drafts if I have to. But for one quarterback leagues, I don't really want to target these guys. Super flex, I'm going for the later guy.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Steve here. These are two guys that if you're like me and you don't take quarterbacks very high in fantasy football, these are guys that you are targeting, and it's probably just a crapshoot of who you can get later. But I would say just some numbers here. The Lions defense is much worse. Per Pro Football Focus, they're 22nd in the league. Whereas the Falcons surprisingly had the 12th best defense in the league. It is Pro Football Focus. It depends if you trust them or not and how much stock you put into it. But it does lend itself to believe that there'll be more offense in the Lions games than there are the Falcons games. But I still do prefer Cousins. I like Jared Goff. But other than Amon-Ra St. Brown, who has dealt with some injuries that he's battled through, Jamison Williams doesn't really move the needle for me as a wide receiver too. I'm blanking here because Josh Reynolds is now gone. I mean, who is their wide receiver too? Other than if you're going to tell me Laporta,
Jamison
Gibbs. So it's Jamison Williams. I mean,
yeah, probably.
Yeah, Kirk's got the more reliable passing weapons. The only thing I will say is they're both statues, and Goff has a way better offensive line, probably top 5 in the league. So I lean Cousins, but like Steve said, I'll take whoever comes cheaper for me.
So I get it, whoever comes cheaper, but like Kirk Cousins, his floor is much higher historically than Jared Goff. Jared Goff, was pretty good with the Rams, had a couple nice years, had a lot of bad years, goes to the Lions. Now he's climbing back up. Where Kirk Cousins, if you look at his history, since he's become a starter, he's only had 2 years where he was not a top 12 quarterback in fantasy points per game. So, if you're drafting Kirk Cousins at quarterback 17, right around there, he's going to bring a very high floor. And if you bought into Kirk Cousins in Minnesota in the O'Connell offense, why aren't you buying into Cousins in the Zach Robinson offense? They both come from the McVay tree. It's going to be very similar. Drake London, yeah, sure, little bit of a downgrade from Justin Jefferson. We haven't seen Drake London really pop yet because of a bad situation, bad quarterback, bad offense. He was a higher draft pick, more draft capital for Drake London when he came out than Justin Jefferson. This guy could be a superstar, and we don't know it. And now he's going to be in an ideal situation to break out. And London's ADP is now adjusted because you're paying up for him right around second, early third if you're lucky. And they bring in Darnell Mooney, who handled volume for a few years in Chicago. You have Kyle Pitts, who's there's so much in this Atlanta offense. I don't think people are realizing just how good it's going to be. You bring up the offensive line. At RotoWire, their offensive line rankings updated a week ago, post free agency, post NFL draft. They have the Falcons O-line ranked number 1 in the NFL.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, you got to think they signed Lindstrom, right guard, to a huge contract last year. Jake Matthews, first round pick from a decade ago, still doing his thing. And there's just such a run-heavy team. We didn't really get to see them in a ton of pass protection because they had Desmond Mitter throwing the ball. And
well, just to give you perspective, and I'd have to take a look. Their pass blocking grade for Pro Football Focus was worse than the league last year. 32.
I think they're more of a run blocking line, right?
Yeah, they're better at run blocking, but even that, it was kind of, they were 21st. Again, Pro Football Focus isn't everything, and I'd have to look at the acquisitions that they made. I think Kirk Cousins is probably your guy here, though, to pretty much all of our points. Yeah, I mean, they're both going to go cheap. Everyone's going to be happy to get Cousins if you can get him. And then before you move on, Alex, I brought his comment up here. He said, inefficient markets are great. I'm never mad at mispriced players. It creates opportunity. That's what we're all about here.
Let's go to our next set. It's going to be at the running back position. Saquon Barkley versus Gibbs. And let me pull up the price of these guys. Obviously, Barkley going a little bit higher. Running back 6 off the board, where it looks like Gibbs is going as a running back 4. Actually, so Gibbs is going 2 spots higher than Barkley.
Yeah, I see Gibbs like late first and Barkley like early second.
Matt,
this is NFC ADP, NFFC ADP.
Oh man, I mean everyone was clowning Detroit for the Jahmyr Gibbs pick, right? Then they used their 12th overall pick in the draft last year. Oh, you can't draft a running back that high. That's asinine. Well, turns out that was actually a pretty good pick. So, and in fantasy, we all feasted pretty heavily down the stretch. How much of David Montgomery are we going to see? Because it looked as time went on throughout the season last year, Montgomery got phased out. He still made some big plays, but I think maybe people that are detractors to Jahmyr Gibbs could continue to hammer home the point that, but Montgomery. But this is a run-centric team. Jared Goff is best off of play action. Pete already said he's a statue, so he needs that help. And Jahmyr Gibbs is just such a dynamic player. Saquon Barkley, on the other hand, he's an Iron Man, doesn't get hurt very often. Now he's behind a great offensive line with tons of weapons in Philadelphia. But then there's the Jalen Hurts factor of how many touchdowns will Jalen Hurts vulture from Saquon Barkley via tush push. So this is a tough one for me, man. Both players I would love to have on my fantasy team, no doubt about it. Oh, man, I'm probably going to lean Jahmyr Gibbs here just because the vulturing does scare me with Jalen Hurts, and I'm sure they'll take a little bit of the load off of his plate compared to years past, but at the same time, man, I know no Jason Kelsey via retirement could change up the tush-push dynamic a bit because he was the integral piece of that play, but Gibbs, whether he's catching the ball, running the ball, and if you get that guy a sliver of open space, he's just going to make some spectacular happen. So we've only seen 1 year of Gibbs. We've seen 6-7 years of Barkley at least. So to me, I'll take the younger, fresher guy and a super exciting offense. They're both great offenses, don't get me wrong, but I think there's way more upside with Gibbs, and that's kind of why we're seeing him at RB4 above Barkley.
Steve?
Yeah, I've always liked Saquon. Looking at one of my auction leagues here, I got him for like $45 last year. I remember I drafted him as a rookie to like a 4-year contract, and he tore his ACL. Then he got hurt again, but it's tough. I mean, Saquon in a whole new place now. Better offensive line with the Giants. It was always a shit offensive line. He was always gonna have to scratch out yards. Really, never really was fully healthy. Again, mentioned the ACL injuries, had ankle injuries, high ankle sprains. So Gibbs comes on the scene last year, and they get rid of DeAndre Swift, and I was questioning that a little bit. Is Gibbs better than Swift? And I think he showed that without a doubt. It was a great pick by the Lions. He looked absolutely awesome, especially down the stretch when they started to give him more carries. So, yeah, I kind of like getting Gibbs late first. I've had a lot of Saquon. I want to get more Gibbs this year, I think. I still will go after Saquon, of course, because that Philly situation does seem very nice with that offensive line. Despite, Kelsey leaving, I still think there'll be a solid offensive line. Once again, run blocking. They'll be able to move the ball, plenty of opportunities to score and in the passing game. So, yeah, I mean, the Philly was a dumpster fire last year going into the playoffs, and they lost in the first round. I thought Sirianni should have got fired. The Lions are a better story. They're on more of an uptrend. So, yeah, I'm going to go Gibbs over Saquon, but it's still pretty close.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go with Saquon here. Reason being is, look, I'm a big David Montgomery fan. They paid the guy. They're going to use him. This is a team that loves to run the football. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be involved in the passing game, no doubt. But Saquon Barkley had 11 less targets last season. With Steve's got a visitor, I guess. Saquon Barkley, he had 17 carries per game, so he averaged 5 more per game, just slightly less targets. But I want the better player here. Saquon Barkley injured his ankle. He was playing banged up all year. For a running back, that's just not a recipe for success. He's playing behind one of the best offensive lines in football, and Jalen Hurts was banged up last year. That offense was dysfunctional as hell. If you remember Miles Sanders 2 years ago, he was playing good football, and then Steichen left, and then the offense went to shit. Like they can't rely on Jalen to do it with his legs the whole time. I think they're going to lean on the running back to keep Jalen healthy. Yes. Do we worry about the touchdowns being vultured with Saquon? Absolutely. But give me the better player 9 times out of 10. And they're both playing against really good offensive lines. But the difference is Barkley has no competition back there. Boston Scott's gone. Rashad Penny didn't sniff the field last year. And DeAndre Swift is gone too. DeAndre Swift had 1,000 yards last year. I mean, you couldn't tell me he had 1,000 yards last year. I'd have to see it to believe it. He averaged 4.6 yards per carry behind this offensive line last year. DeAndre Swift, decent football player, but he isn't Saquon Barkley. So I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley at the lower price behind one of the best offensive lines in football. And I'll definitely take him at that price.
It is close for me between the two, but I think I'm also leaning Saquon. David Montgomery, you brought up, he got paid. Down the stretch last year, David Montgomery did not go away. And depending on what you think the stretch is, let's say week 14, 10 carries, 3 receptions, that's 13 touches. Week 15, 19 touches. Week 16, 19 touches and 14. Week 18 against Minnesota, I don't even know if that game meant anything. He only had 10 carries. But, like, you see where I'm going here. Montgomery is going to see anywhere between 12 to 15 plus touches per game. And this offense is going to be a two-headed monster at the running back position. But Gibbs is obviously going to have the higher ceiling. What Gibbs does really well, he's extremely efficient anytime he touches the ball. 7th best in true yards per carry, 8th best in yards per touch. Checks off every box when it comes to efficiency metrics and breakaway runs and evaded tackles and yards created. The guy does it all. Great offensive line. When I said Atlanta was ranked number 1 by RotoWire, Detroit's number 2. We go to Philly. And when this move happened, when Saquon went to Philly, I compared this to Christian McCaffrey going to San Francisco. Similar parallels. McCaffrey oft injured, bad team, bad situation. He goes to San Francisco. All of a sudden, the guy's Superman and breaking fantasy football. Well, who's to say Saquon Barkley can't do the same? He's going to be behind the best offensive line he's ever been. They have Kellen Moore. Didn't work out with the Chargers, but I think it is going to work out. Remember all the success he had in Dallas with an efficient running game and pass-catching weapons. Well, his weapons are probably better now at wide receiver in Philly than he even had in Dallas. What does worry me is he likes to push the ball up the field. I was out on Eckler because I was worried about Eckler's target share. So I don't know if Barkley's quite going to see as many pass-catching opportunities, but he's still one of the best running backs in the NFL. And you brought up how Swift had over 1,000 yards. Just imagine what Saquon Barkley is going to do in this offense. You need to protect Jalen Hurts. He was banged up a lot down the stretch last year. How do you protect him? You bring in a running back to absorb some of those hits, like Buffalo has been doing to try to protect Josh Allen a little bit. So I think I'm going to go with the guy, Saquon Barkley, who could potentially be the RB1. Like, that's how high I believe Barkley's ceiling is. I think he can finish and beat out McCaffrey. That's how much of an offensive upgrade Saquon Barkley is getting. And again, just go back and look at the career trajectory of Christian McCaffrey with Carolina, how bad it was. He was always banged up, and then he goes to San Francisco and he's completely unlocked. Well, this could potentially happen for Saquon.
Yeah, I agree. Before we move on, I wanted to pull this comment up. Alex Keaton says Gibbs all day. Barkley is beyond his window for legendary upside. Gibbs will smash this season. So obviously Alex doesn't agree with Anthony, but that's quite all right.
Gibbs doesn't. I like Gibbs a lot. I was a Gibbs guy last year. I just don't think he has the ceiling of Barkley, where Barkley could potentially ascend to. Gibbs doesn't. I don't know. Not that he doesn't have it in him. He has David Montgomery standing in his way.
Yeah. David Montgomery's a good football player too, man. People give him shit. He's a pounder. They want to pound the ball there. Gibbs, not to say Gibbs can't, but he is a pounder. I would put my money on it. The first snap of the season, David Montgomery is in the backfield. And
yeah, Dan Campbell outright said he loves the guy. I mean, they loved him, and that's why they brought him in from Chicago. But you could say with Philly, Jalen Hurts stealing those touchdowns. It's not like, I mean, Kelsey's gone, but they're still going to use that tush push. That's such a big play for them. And when they're on the 1 yard line, it's like automatic. I mean, is it going to get a little bit less effective? Maybe, but still, it's a QB sneak. Most freaking Tom Brady could get in. I mean, freaking Jalen Hurts should still be able to get in, and then you got Devonta Smith, you got AJ Brown. So they have a lot of guys they want to utilize too. So yeah, I mean, I don't think I see Saquon RB1. I think he definitely could have one of his best years though. So it is really close. Could Gibbs sort of take the job from Montgomery and you get even more involved in the passing game too, which I think they should do with him because he is so explosive and he showed that, late in the playoffs. I mean, he just, some of those runs just really damn good. So younger, fresher legs. It's very close, very intriguing argument. I could see case for both guys.
Yeah. Let's move to, let's see, where do we want to go here? Garrett Wilson versus Puka Nacua. And this is, I was a big Garrett Wilson guy last year. And Puka's like, the new guy to the party. I think there's a lot of different variables to both sides. Both have veteran quarterbacks with a little bit of an injury history. Garrett Wilson, you're still paying up. Wide receiver 8, where Puka Nacua, wide receiver 6.
Yeah, I'll continue to go first here. And I'm back. I love Puka Nacua. Stole him off the waiver wire. Free 99 right before week 1 kicked off in the home league. Never looked back.
That was crazy. He was going. Those bids on him were nuts that first week.
And they paid out. And now look at him. He's right smack dab in the middle of the first round. So good for Puka. Love him as a player. But Garrett Wilson with Aaron Rodgers healthy and available just makes me so ecstatic. I know Anthony was beating the drum incessantly prior to the Rodgers injury about Garrett Wilson being able to break fantasy with just monster production. And the guy I liked him more than Olave coming out of Ohio State. He's just that quick twitch guy who can run every route. And despite his smaller size, he can win those contested balls as well. Blazing speed, of course. So Puka, I know Pete is if you're in the camp of Cooper Kupp's going to bounce back, maybe we see a bit of Puka Nacua regression, just a slight tick based on Kupp being 100% healthy now versus what he was last season. You got Matthew Stafford versus Aaron Rodgers in this equation. I like Rodgers more than Stafford, to be completely honest with you. So I think that might be what puts me over. And of course, the price, you're getting a slightly better price here. Not a big difference between these two going at 6 and 8 in the first round, but give me Garrett Wilson here with the best quarterback of his career by far, assuming Rodgers can stay 100% healthy. I just think that he's going to absolutely return every bit of value that you get when you take him at the 108. Not slandering Puka Nacua at all. Love the talent. I just think we've gotten too bullish on Nacua.
Yeah, that's tough. That's another tough one for me because Nacua, man, it was so damn good last year, and he showed it throughout the whole season. And the thing about McVay, what he does best is he puts these guys in opportunities to really just smash. And we saw that with Kupp, and then Nacua kind of took the Kupp role. And, he was absolutely awesome last year. So I think we'll see that again. Now, Matthew Stafford, definitely could be hurt. At times he seems like he's wearing down. Last year he kind of held it together for most of the year, and it seemed like he was going to fall apart, and then he kind of rejuvenated himself. But yeah, McVay over Nathaniel Hackett big time as far as setting up Nakua. But Rodgers, the freaking the injury last year to the Achilles absolutely swamped Garrett Wilson, especially his touchdown production. Garrett Wilson could get double-digit touchdowns this year easy with Rodgers. Back shoulder fades. They're going to be working their ass off. So it's so damn close. I love Garrett Wilson. I think he's so immensely talented. I was taking him at the back end of the first round last year. I got burnt, obviously, when Rodgers went down that first game, which was a disaster, not only for fantasy, but as a Jets fan. So this one's close. I mean, I definitely want to have some Puka. Maybe the first round, is a little bit tough. Maybe I'd like to get him beginning of second, kind of where Garrett Wilson's going, but it's very close. I mean, I'd probably be happy with either guy regardless.
Anthony, do you want to go before me, or you want me to? You want me to take it?
You go.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the exciting thing about Garrett Wilson is, he could be Puka Nacua. It's like the magic box, right? Like, look at what we have. We've seen what Puka can do with his quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is exciting. I love the guy. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch. And it's actually kind of tough because Matt Stafford is probably my favorite quarterback in football right now. And I love Aaron Rodgers. Matt Stafford is a technician. He's so efficient. He does not get the credit that he deserves. But my thing is, I've already seen the connection. Puka Nacua was a rookie. He had 1,446 air yards, 1,486 receiving yards, 105 catches, 159 targets, sixth in fantasy points per game, 6 touchdowns. So he was 6 in points per game, and that's only with 6 touchdowns. And I get it. Cooper Kupp's coming back, and I think Cooper Kupp's going to be very good, but there's no reason that both guys can't succeed in this offense. And there's no reason why Kupp doesn't open things up for Puka. Both guys are going to stress these defenses out. Puka did what he did when he was pretty much the only guy on the field. You have Tutu Atwell, I guess. Tyler Higbee, he's not scaring you. And Kyron Williams played the least amount of stacked boxes in the NFL, which means that teams were dropping in coverage for Puka Nacua and this receiving core, and they still couldn't stop the guy. Now you add Cooper Kupp, who's going to stress the defense even more. I'll take Puka because I've seen him do it. I love Garrett Wilson. Don't get me wrong, but Puka is safer. He's safer, and on top of it, he's a safe guy who was 6th in fantasy points per game last year. If Garrett Wilson puts up the season Puka Nacua has last year, it'd be nice. But I don't even know if I could see him doing that. And it's nothing against Garrett Wilson, but Puka was a rookie and did what he did last year. It was insane. I'd be ecstatic if Garrett Wilson could put up those numbers that Puka did last year. I just don't see it. And I know he's going to be a one-man show. You have Mike Williams, to have Corley, and there's not a ton of weapons around him. But until I see it with Rodgers and this Nathaniel Hackett offense, I'm going to go with Puka Nacua and the mastermind in Sean McVay.
Actually, real quick, it's really Aaron Rodgers' offense at this point.
I know. I had to throw a Nate Hack.
I did too. But now I was saying it last year. This is Nate Hackett's just standing on the sideline. Now Rodgers is about to take over. So go ahead, Anthony.
I had to. But I know it is Rodgers' offense.
Yeah.
I am going to go with my guy, Garrett Wilson. If you put Garrett Wilson in the situation Puka was in, he probably would have shattered Puka Nacua. Garrett Wilson, first-round pedigree for a reason. Garrett Wilson, he had to deal with Tim Boyle and.
But let me ask you:
Zach
Is Garrett Wilson in that situation this year? Is he in Puka's situation? It's nice to say.
I'll take. Now here's my comp here. There's just as much injury risk with Matthew Stafford as there is with Aaron Rodgers. Stafford has a bad back, and 1 hit takes him out.
Yeah, but Rodgers has had more injury history than Stafford has in terms of their careers.
But Rodgers has supported a lot of top 2, 3 wide receivers like Devontae Adams and Jordy Nelson. And if you look at Garrett Wilson target share first 2 years, $147, $168. It is not his fault that a lot of them were either uncatchable or inefficient balls.
That's
if
true.
We get Aaron Rodgers and you give
He'll be on the money.
Garrett Wilson 168 targets. I can't imagine the numbers he's going to put up. Garrett Wilson still looked pretty damn good with Zach Wilson footballs at times. He's a special player. He's just, it's almost like the Drake London effect, where the better comp, DJ Moore, all those years in Carolina, couldn't get out of his own way with bad quarterback play. You put him with Justin Fields, who isn't even the greatest thrower, and he was a wide receiver 9 in fantasy points per game. So situation quarterback makes that much of a difference. And again, Puka still has Cooper Kupp to deal with. Mike Williams is nice. He's a field stretcher, and he's also injured a lot. So this is going to be a funnel offense to Garrett Wilson, assuming Rodgers is healthy. And this year, they do have an insurance policy. Tyrod Taylor, to me, is a top 5 backup in the NFL. To where if Aaron Rodgers gets banged up, misses time for any reason, I trust Tyrod Taylor to get me Garrett Wilson fantasy points a lot more than what they had there in the past 2 seasons. So I will take the risk on Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, 2 back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons with those
guys.
Exactly. If Big Mike can stay healthy, though, that is going to take away from Garrett Wilson's
big if
touchdown production.
And Malachi Corley.
But that's obviously a big if, right? Corley, even Brees. But I mean, Nakua only had 6 touchdowns. They love to use Kyron around the goal.
Just like what was his name? Mecole Hardman was going to take away too last year.
Well, I mean, we're comparing.
They took him away.
Are we comparing Mike Williams to Mecole Hardman? No. I mean, that's not even a fucking.
Hey, listen, Mike Williams, when he's healthy, though, he is a guy.
He is a
guy. He's not just a guy. He's a good player.
Yeah. The problem is he's hurt every single year because he goes up for the ball, he jumps 97 feet in the air, and he falls and he gets hurt. That's the problem.
I heard you bring up air yards, Pete. Garrett Wilson had the 10th most air yards, 3rd most air yard share. So the metrics are all hitting. The accuracy and quality of the targets were not. He had, again, 168 targets. Catchable target rate, he was 65th. So only 67% of his targets were catchable. So really, he had 114 targets.
That is true. The one caveat that I would say is, one
more, target accuracy. 76th
Anthony's
amongst qualifying
right now.
76th.
Who had the best defense in football? Or one of the out of the 2? Let me just ask you this: who had a better defense last year?
The Jets.
Okay. Do the Rams don't have Aaron Donald? Do they have a good defense? They were 25th in the NFL.
They made it work.
I'm going to say that they're going to be in more shootouts than a team like the Jets.
Good counter.
The one thing that people don't realize, no, let me finish. The one thing that people don't realize is Aaron Rodgers, when he was as good as he was, he's not an air yards guy. He's efficient. He's not throwing for like how many times did we see Rodgers have 3-4 touchdowns with 225 passing yards? All he is efficient. So
that's
granted, yes,
those
touchdowns go to Garrett Wilson, but it's hard to project touchdowns. And I trust Sean McVay and Stafford, who have been in a system for a long time together. I trust that team and that offense over an offense that was makeshift last year that, didn't have Rodgers, but that was dysfunction to the highest level last year. Until I see it, I can't believe it. That's kind of my thinking.
But we've seen it before. And this is where we've seen it. 2020, Nathaniel Hackett, offense in Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers.
He wasn't
He supported Devontae Adams, wide receiver 1 in fantasy points per game. Only 1,300 yards receiving. 18 touchdowns, no big deal. 2021, Devontae Adams, wide receiver 2, fantasy points per game. Only 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns. A little bit of a touchdown regression. Aaron Rodgers, Mr. Efficiency those years. Only 4,000 yards passing. 48 touchdowns. I'll take that efficiency all day long. 2021, 37 touchdowns. I'll take that efficiency too. 70% completion percentage in that offense. I'll take though. I will take
Aaron
that
Rodgers 4 or 5 years ago. Yes. I don't know if he can support. I have no idea. Like Rodgers is going to be good. He's going to be efficient. They have one of the best defenses in football. How many times are we going to see the Jets push the ball down the field? They're going to play. They're going to control the ball. Rodgers is going to dig.
But isn't that what LaFleur? But that was a LaFleur offense.
Sure,
where Nathaniel Hackett came from. That was a run defense, and they don't want to throw. That's why I'm scared to draft Jordan Love this year. They really don't want to throw that much. LaFleur does not want to throw the football, and neither is Hackett, neither is Aaron.
Yeah, listen, but sometimes when you have all those receivers, you got to throw the football. Yeah, otherwise you're not playing to your team's strengths.
Listen, all I'm going to say is this. Like I said before, you look at Kyron Williams, who played the least amount of stack boxes. What does that mean? That means defenders are in coverage. They're not pressing the line of scrimmage. I saw that comment. They're not pressing the line of scrimmage. So with Cooper Kupp not there, how come Puka was able to get so open? I mean, and now you're going to insert Kupp. Right? Do you think that teams are going to stack the box even more? No, but they're going to put more. If you're a team game planning, are you game planning for Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua? How do you game? Who do you game plan for?
Depends.
That's the point. But that's the point.
Garrett Wilson still managed to catch the ball, and he had 6 defenders draped on him half the time.
And I'm factoring in the Rodgers, all the motivation he has from being doubted, hated on, et cetera, over the past year. He's going to come out firing right out of the gate.
All right,
Garrett Wilson's going to be his guy.
Where's the graphic, the bet?
If Aaron Rodgers plays 10 snaps, he already won.
Where you got that little graphic in there somewhere that says let's make a bet? I will bet. I'll DoorDash you. I'll order you.
Anthony still owes me from last year's bet. He never paid up.
What bet? I thought we called the Mac Jones bet off.
I don't think so. No. I don't forget what it was. Mac Jones versus Derek Carr, right? Better number.
Yeah, but how does that fare when fucking Mac Jones didn't even play a whole year?
Well, what are you gonna do? Can't you gotta put that up front.
Boy.
The guy's gonna get hurt or not.
I'm with Steve.
I'm just busting your balls, but I do like the bets. Let's put it down. Let's make a bet.
Yeah, let's put a bet.
Let's pay it out. Let's pay it out. End of the year, injury or not. There's an injury. You put the stipulation up front. That's it.
Where's that graphic? There's the liquor pouring. Where's the graphic?
I gotta find it because my board doesn't work with StreamYard.
It's in the banners.
I gotta find it. It's right here on my soundboard, but I've hit the button. It don't work.
It worked for me when I did it the other day. I have no idea.
No, it works if we click on it, but my soundboard doesn't work here and my graphics board.
It wouldn't surprise me to see Garrett Wilson ask Nacua or Nacua surpass. It's both these guys are very, very talented.
There we go.
Obviously, Wilson has the first round pedigree, but
all right. Well, listen, let's just put a bet on it.
You could probably bet it. Just put the bet and move on to the next.
Yeah, pizza pie. I'll order you a pizza. I'll get you a buffalo chicken, whatever specialty pizza you like. You order me from your favorite place around you. That Nacua finishes higher than Garrett Wilson this year.
Let's log it. We should have a sheet for this. We should do this official now.
All right, we'll get a sheet for it. We'll get a sheet for it.
We should do this for we already have our betting group anyway. We should just fucking make a sheet for that.
Yeah, just put it on a new tab. Just put a new tab there. Yeah, we'll do it.
All right.
Pizza bet number 1.
Pizza bet.
I like the pizza bet. We can get our listeners involved.
I think I had a pizza or an Arby's, or I think I had a pizza and an Arby's bet with you guys last year.
I would do anything for an Arby's, man.
Beef and sheds.
We'll have some Arby's bets too.
But I have to go an hour. I have to go to Bordentown for fucking Arby's.
Maybe the DoorDash will drop it off for you. Or fucking.
I've never had Arby's in my life. I'm not gonna lie.
An hour DoorDash would cost like $300 for a $4 sandwich.
Never had Arby's. That's sinful.
You sign up for that DoorDash premium. You don't have to pay delivery fees.
Let's go to our last talking point. That was a fun one. And this one, 2 more wide receivers, George Pickens and Tank Dell. Wow. Let me pull up the ADP here. So we have Pickens, wide receiver 31, Tank Dell, wide receiver 25.
Well, I think I know where we're going with this. Pittsburgh got rid of Deontay Johnson. They retain Pickens, but they also insert Arthur Smith. We all know how his play calling went in Atlanta. You grab Russell Wilson and Justin Fields to engage in the quarterback battle. Let's assume Russell Wilson, for the sake of the argument, is the quarterback. So now Pickens is the wide receiver 1. We saw Cortland Sutton do pretty damn well last year. Granted, a totally different offense, but still his wide receiver 1 came through in a pretty big way. Tank Dell absolutely shattered all expectations. CJ Stroud was pounding the table for the Texans front office to get him. They got him, and he flourished quickly, became just this incredible prospect who was doing it all, and then he ended up getting injured blocking on a goal line play. So bad outcome for Tank Dell. Now he has to deal with Stephon Diggs in the offense. There's Joe Mixon. They retained Nico Collins, who's still the alpha in terms of size. So Dalton Schultz is still there. I mean, there's a lot of mouths to feed in this Texans offense all of a sudden, and they could be a lot more balanced than we saw a year ago when they couldn't run the football. So in this situation, man, I'm going George Pickens. The guy has shown that elite burst as a wide receiver 1 at times, even with my guy Kenny Pickett, when the worst quarterback in probably the last 10 or 15 years that we've seen. So now you get an upgrade with Russell Wilson. I will say the play calling from Arthur Smith might have some people a bit skeptical that we're going to see Atlanta 2.0 and with Najee just getting rock after rock after rock. But Russell Wilson is so much better than Desmond Ridder. It's not even funny. So to me, taking the value here, George Pickens, wide receiver 31. Tank Dell at 25 is pretty high. We'd have to see a duplicate effort from a year ago, which isn't out of the question. But like I said, with these new additions to the Texans offense, probably going to be a lot more balanced now with Mixon. To me, I am 100% backing Pickens, although I do love what Tank Dell did in year 1.
Yeah, I had a lot of Tank Dell last year. Hurt me down the stretch, obviously, when he had the ACL and I believe it was an MCL injury. Yeah, so talented. Such a good connection with CJ Stroud, but you do bring in Diggs and Mixon as well. I mean, and they did run at times a lot with Singletary. There was games where he had 25, maybe 30 carries, and he was way better than Dameon Pierce. But yeah, Mixon's definitely an upgrade. They probably be maybe a little bit more consistent with the run, and then you got Diggs. So now, and plus this guy's coming off a major knee injury. Might take him a little while to get back to fully 100%. And plus, he got shot. I don't know how much. I mean, we've seen Brian Robinson overcome that. Thank God he's okay as well. Tank Dell. I love George Pickens, but he is a little bit of a head case. So, you don't know how this guy is going to act. He's kind of all over the place a little bit. You see a lot of these Steelers receivers, they're so talented and they end up leaving town eventually, but not before they usually, smash a little bit. So George Pickens has all the talent in the world. He gets a big time quarterback upgrade, whether it's Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. So yeah, 2 rounds later, I'm seeing here in NFC at least. I think I like Pickens over Dell, considering the offseason moves that the Texans did make.
Yeah, I mean, this is I'm kind of in lockstep. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I really don't want either of these guys, if I'm being completely honest with you. Pickens, look, he had 1,140 yards last year with bad quarterback play. If you're going to make this the argument about Garrett Wilson, you can make the similar argument about George Pickens. I mean, air yards 1428 with poor quarterback play, still managed to pull in 63 balls. Now, he only had 106 targets. They're very different receivers. Garrett Wilson had 168. But when talking quality of targets, Matt did talk about Cortland Sutton. Pickens can play a similar role to Sutton. But Sutton, even last year, 10 touchdowns, still finished as 38th in points per game. I mean, I could see a similar thing for Pickens. I just don't feel like Russell Wilson at this point in his career is going to feed receivers enough from a PPR standpoint to support a high finish from a wide receiver standpoint. I do prefer Tank Dell. I know it's tough. I mean, he's in a crowded room, but there is a connection with CJ and this guy for whatever reason. I know Alex here in the comments did say, tank Dell all day. It's Dell is CJ's favorite receiver. I think there's something to be said about that. Stephon Diggs, Nico and Diggs don't have the same skill set as Dell, who Dell's is a burner. He can go downfield and he's a good route runner. It's a crowded offense. The ball, there's only one, and Pickens is pretty much a one-man show over there, but I think they're going to run the ball, and I don't see a potential for high wide receiver 2 with Pickens. I can see Dell breaking out and being a favorite over Nico, who I love Nico, but over Nico and Diggs, and supporting a wide receiver 2 finish over Pickens. I don't believe in the passing offense. Maybe I'm biased because of Russ and being a Broncos fan, and I could definitely admit to that. But even Cortland Sutton, who was Russ's favorite target, and Russ had a big step up last year with 10 touchdowns. Cortland Sutton had. He was wide receiver 38. Like, I don't know. I mean, I need to see the offense. I think they're going to run the ball a lot. And I'll take the wide receiver with the better quarterback, who has a better relationship, who honestly, we don't know. I mean, he could be CJ's favorite option. And if he is, we might think different when the season comes around. So
do we know if Dell's going to be ready for week 1?
I'm operating as if he is. I mean, I know he got shot.
There's a report that just literally came up on my feed. The owner, Cal McNair, said that Dell will make a full recovery after the wound during the shootout in a Florida restaurant.
I did. Yeah, I which was kind of crazy. I mean, praise God, he's okay. It could have been a lot worse. But look, I don't love picking Dell. Maybe I'm trying to be more controversial here, and that's fine. But I'm just trying to make an argument as to why I would take Dell. And the best argument I could say is really just he played 11 games last year, had 1,070 air yards while missing 5 games, seven touchdowns, 18 fantasy points per game. I understand Mixon's there, and I know Stephon Diggs is there, but I don't think CJ Stroud's just going to stop using him. There were times where before Dell went down that it was pretty obvious that Stroud was looking at Dell over Nico. So we'll see, but I think Dell has a chance to emerge as the favorite target there.
I am leaning on the George Pickens side, just so much less competition at his own position. I know they brought in Roman Wilson. They have a bunch of other just guys at wide receiver in Pittsburgh. And with poor quarterback play, George Pickens did pop at times, a lot of high variancy, but I think that will be corrected with Russell Wilson. Obviously not the same player he is, but Russell Wilson, and even if they ever go to Justin Fields, big-time upgrades over Pickett and Mason Rudolph and whatever the hell else they put on the field in Pittsburgh. Targets will be an issue because we know the Arthur Smith offense is going to be run first, going to be a lot of Najee, but there should be some left over for George Pickens, and he's also extremely he's a big play guy. So he may not need a ton, like he may not need 140 targets to pop. And again, where are we drafting George Pickens, wide receiver 31? It won't take much for George Pickens to crack maybe that like 18 to 24 range. And why I say that, Pickens last year was a wide receiver 30 in PPR. So it's not going to take much, again, for him to, I don't want to say smash his ADP, or to return some value on his ADP. Where Tank Dell at this point, he's going to be extremely injury dependent. Like if this offense goes away, I think it will. It might be close to a 50-50 run pass split because the Texans are out to win football games. They look really nice for fantasy, but I don't know if they're going to be that great for fantasy, as some other teams may be. So yeah, I'm going to lean on George Pickens here because again, barring a Nico Collins who does miss a few games or a Stephon Diggs injury, I think Tank Dell is going to be buried as a number 3. And don't forget, they have Schultz and Mixon out of the backfield.
Yeah, I don't have much to say on it. My argument feels pretty wobbly to begin with. I other than feel and I don't really have a significant argument for Dell. I could totally understand taking Pickens just like you guys. I mean, I don't know, Steve, Matt, do you guys have anything to add to it?
I think I still want to take Tank Dell. I love Tank Dell. But 2 rounds later, I think I like Pickens because Deontay's gone. I mean, that's huge. You got Diggs. I mean, Diggs is he gets open. So he's going to compete with targets with Dell a little bit. And then you got him coming off a major knee injury. So I don't know if that's going to take him a couple of weeks to get fully acclimated. But if Tank Dell starts to drop, if they're saying he's going to miss week 1 or week 2 or something like that, then, he's going in the same area as Pickens. Then I probably, maybe I like Dell just as much as Pickens.
But we are going to wrap up from here. We're going to be back same time, same place on Wednesday. We're going to figure out what we're going to talk about. Maybe something similar to this. I know we plan on possibly doing another live underdog draft on Fridays until more like news and rumors and camp and OTA start picking up. But this is going to be, we're already in fantasy draft season. So it's, again, we're with the NFL draft behind us. We're a beeline to week 1. It's literally going to be here before you know it. So make sure you tune in here for all of your fantasy football, NFL, and sports betting needs. For Pete, Steve, Matt, and myself, this is the Face Off Sports Network. If you want to win, you have to tune in. We'll see you Wednesday.